I never imagined that moving into Meadowbrook Heights in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, would turn into the worst decision of my life. But when I saw my Honda Accord buried under 3 feet of packed snow that a certain HOA board member had deliberately piled against my driveway, I knew war had been declared. My name is Marcus Reeves, and I had been living in this cookie-cutter subdivision for exactly 8 months when everything went sideways. I worked as a software developer from home, which meant I was around to witness the petty tyranny of our HOA more than most people. The woman who made my life hell was named Brenda Patterson, a 52-year-old real estate agent with that trademark haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager," and an attitude that could curdle milk at 20 paces. It started innocently enough. I had painted my front door a shade of blue that I thought was well within the HOA-approved color palette. The guidelines specifically stated that doors could be painted in colors from Benjamin Moore's historical collection, and I had chosen Gentleman's Gray, which had a subtle blue undertone. 3 days after I finished painting, I found a violation notice taped to that very door, citing an unapproved color and threatening a $50 daily fine if I did not repaint it within 2 weeks. I had called Brenda directly, since she was the head of the Architectural Review Committee. Her voice over the phone was sickeningly sweet, dripping with false concern. "Oh, Marcus, I understand your confusion, but that particular shade simply does not meet our standards. The undertones are too blue. You will need to repaint it in a neutral gray or face the fines." I had brought my paint can and the HOA guidelines to the next board meeting, laying out my case in front of the 5 board members seated at a folding table in the community center. Brenda sat in the middle, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. I showed them the color name, the Benjamin Moore catalog page, and the exact wording in the guidelines. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Tom Henderson, the treasurer, actually nodded and said, "He's right, Brenda. That color is on the approved list." Brenda's face had flushed red. "The spirit of the rule is what matters, not just the letter. We cannot have doors that look garish or stand out too much from the neighborhood aesthetic." "There's nothing in the guidelines about spirit or aesthetic," I had replied, keeping my voice calm. "There's a specific list of approved colors, and mine is on it." After 20 minutes of debate, the board voted 3-2 to rescind the violation. Brenda and her loyalist, a mousy woman named Patricia Simmons, voted against me. Brenda's eyes had bored into me as I left that meeting, and I knew I had made an enemy. The harassment started small. I received a violation notice because my trash can was visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though I had only rolled it out an hour before pickup. Another notice arrived because my lawn was supposedly half an inch too tall, though when I measured it, it was well within the 3-inch maximum. Each time, I documented everything with photos, timestamps, and measurements. Each time, I filed appeals that were eventually upheld, but the process was exhausting. Then winter arrived, and Phoenix got hit with a freak snowstorm in late January. It was the kind of weather event that happened maybe once every 20 years, dumping nearly a foot of snow across the valley. The subdivision roads were a mess, and the HOA had contracted a local company to plow the streets and common areas. I had been working from my home office when I heard the rumble of heavy machinery outside. I had installed a comprehensive security camera system around my house 3 months earlier, partly because of the ongoing HOA harassment and partly for general security. I had 4 cameras covering every angle of my property: front yard, driveway, backyard, and side yard. They were high definition, recorded continuously to a local server, and backed up to cloud storage. When I heard the plow, I glanced at the monitor I kept on my desk showing all 4 camera feeds. What I saw made my blood run cold. A massive orange plow truck was making its way down our street, pushing snow to the sides as expected. But when it reached my house, the plow operator, instead of continuing straight or pushing snow evenly, deliberately angled the blade and shoved an enormous pile of dense, packed snow directly into my driveway, completely blocking it. The pile was at least 4 feet high at its peak and extended about 6 feet into my driveway, making it impossible to get my car out without hours of shoveling. I watched, stunned, as the truck continued down the street, plowing normally for every other house. Then I saw something that made the whole picture clear. At the end of the street, the truck stopped, and Brenda Patterson's white Mercedes SUV pulled up beside it. I zoomed in on the camera feed and watched as Brenda leaned out her window, clearly talking to the driver. She handed him something, probably cash, and he nodded. They spoke for about 30 seconds before she drove away and he continued plowing. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. She had actually paid the plow driver to bury my driveway. This was not just petty harassment anymore. This was deliberate property interference, and I had it all on video. I saved the footage immediately, creating multiple backups. Then I went outside to assess the damage. The snow was heavy and wet, already starting to freeze in the cold air. My driveway was completely impassable. I would need to shovel for hours or rent equipment just to get my car out. I took photos from every angle with my phone, showing the massive pile blocking my driveway while every other house on the street had clear, accessible driveways. My neighbor across the street, an older man named Donald Frazier, came out of his house and walked over. "That's rough, Marcus," he said, shaking his head. "I saw the whole thing. That plow driver went out of his way to dump all that snow on your property. You should file a complaint." "Did you see Brenda Patterson talking to him afterward?" I asked. Donald's eyes widened. "I didn't see that part, but it wouldn't surprise me. She's had it out for you since that door color thing. Woman's got a mean streak a mile wide." I thanked Donald and went back inside. I was not going to shovel. Not yet. First, I was going to make sure I had all my evidence organized and that I understood exactly what my options were. I spent the next 2 hours researching Arizona property law, HOA regulations, and civil remedies for intentional property damage and harassment. What I learned was encouraging. Arizona law was actually quite protective of homeowners against HOA overreach. Additionally, deliberately blocking someone's driveway could constitute criminal mischief or property damage, depending on the circumstances and the homeowner's ability to prove intent. I had intent on video, with Brenda paying off the plow driver. I also discovered that under Arizona revised statutes, HOAs could be held liable for the actions of their contractors and board members if those actions were taken in the course of HOA business. Since Brenda was the HOA president and had clearly used the HOA's contracted plow service to target me, the HOA itself could potentially be held liable. But I did not want to just file a lawsuit and wait months or years for resolution. I wanted justice, and I wanted it to be poetic. Brenda had tried to bury me with snow. I was going to bury her with consequences. My first call was to the plow company. I asked to speak to a manager and explained that one of their drivers had deliberately dumped snow on my property. The manager, a gruff-sounding man named Rick, was immediately defensive. "Our drivers follow their route maps and plow according to contract specifications. If there was excess snow in your driveway, it was probably just the natural flow of where the snow had to go." I have video footage showing your driver deliberately angling the blade to push snow into my driveway, then stopping to talk to someone who appeared to pay him cash," I said calmly. "I also have video showing that every other house on my street was plowed normally." "I'm happy to send you the footage." There was a long pause. "Send it to my email. I will review it and get back to you." I sent the footage within 5 minutes, including a detailed timeline and written description. 2 hours later, Rick called me back. His tone had completely changed. "Mr. Reeves, I've reviewed the footage and I owe you an apology. That behavior is completely unacceptable. The driver, Kevin Mills, has been terminated effective immediately. We will be out this afternoon to clear your driveway at no charge, and I would like to offer you a written apology and assurance that this will never happen again." "I appreciate that," I said, "but I also need to know if Kevin told you who paid him to do this." "Because the woman in the white Mercedes is Brenda Patterson, the president of our HOA." Rick sighed. He admitted that a woman approached him and offered him $200 to push extra snow into your driveway. He claims he didn't know who she was, but he confirmed it was a white Mercedes SUV. He knows he messed up, and honestly, he's lucky you're not pressing criminal charges. "I might still press charges," I said, "but right now, I am more interested in dealing with the person who paid him." After I hung up with Rick, I sent a formal complaint to the HOA board, documenting the incident with photos, video footage, and a detailed written account. I included the plow company's admission that their driver had been paid to deliberately dump snow on my property, and I noted that video footage showed Brenda Patterson paying the driver immediately after the incident. I also filed a police report with the Phoenix Police Department. The officer who took my report, a young woman named Officer Chen, reviewed the video footage on her tablet and shook her head. "This is pretty cut and dried," she said. "It's criminal mischief at minimum, possibly property damage depending on whether there was any actual damage to your driveway or vehicle access. We will follow up with both Miss Patterson and the plow driver." "The plow driver has already been fired," I told her. "But I want to make sure there are consequences for the person who instigated this. We will investigate thoroughly," Officer Chen assured me. The plow company made good on their promise and sent a crew out that afternoon. They cleared my driveway completely and even salted it to prevent ice buildup. Rick, the manager, came out personally to apologize again and to give me a written statement confirming what had happened, and that they had terminated Kevin Mills for misconduct. That evening, I received an email from Tom Henderson, the HOA treasurer. "Marcus, I received your complaint about the plowing incident. This is very serious and I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night. Please plan to attend and present your evidence." The emergency board meeting was held in the same community center where I had fought over my door color months earlier. All 5 board members were present: Brenda Patterson, Patricia Simmons, Tom Henderson, Karen Woodley, and James Martinez. About a dozen other homeowners were also in attendance, having heard through the neighborhood grapevine that something big was going down. Tom called the meeting to order and gestured for me to present my case. I had prepared a full presentation with printed copies of photos, video stills, the plow company's written statement, and the police report number. I played the video footage on my laptop, connected to a projector so everyone could see. The room fell silent as the video showed the plow truck deliberately dumping snow into my driveway, then showed Brenda's white Mercedes pulling up beside the truck, and her leaning out to talk to the driver. The footage was crystal clear, showing Brenda handing something to the driver through his window. When the video ended, Tom looked at Brenda. "Do you have an explanation for this?" Brenda's face was pale, but her voice was defiant. I was simply checking on the plow driver's progress. As HOA president, it is my responsibility to ensure our contractors are doing their jobs properly. The plow driver confessed to his employer that you paid him $200 to deliberately dump snow on my driveway, I said, keeping my voice level. He was fired for it. The plow company has provided a written statement confirming this. You can claim you were checking on progress, but the video and the driver's confession tell a different story. Patricia Simmons jumped in. This is just Marcus trying to cause trouble again. He has had a vendetta against Brenda ever since the door color issue. A vendetta, I repeated. I painted my door an approved color. Brenda issued an invalid violation. The board overturned it. That's not a vendetta, that's following the rules. And now, because she did not like being overruled, she has escalated to paying contractors to damage my property. This is not HOA business. This is personal harassment. Karen Woodley, who had been silent until now, spoke up. I've been on this board for 3 years, and I've watched Brenda issue more violation notices in the past year than the previous board issued in 5 years. Most of them get overturned on appeal. I think we need to seriously consider whether her actions are in the best interest of the community. James Martinez nodded. I agree. This is not the first time we have had complaints about Brenda being overly aggressive with enforcement, but paying a contractor to sabotage a homeowner's property crosses a line. That's not just aggressive, it's potentially criminal. Brenda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I do not have to sit here and listen to these accusations. I have dedicated countless hours to this community, and this is the thanks I get. You are all turning on me because one whiny homeowner does not like being held accountable. Held accountable for what? Tom asked quietly. Marcus has been right in every dispute. His door color was approved. His trash can timing was correct. His lawn measurements were within limits. You've been harassing him, Brenda, and now you have gone too far. The room erupted in cross-talk, with several homeowners chiming in with their own stories of Brenda's aggressive enforcement. One woman described getting a violation notice because her mailbox was supposedly 3 inches too far from the curb, even though it had been in the same spot for 10 years. A man talked about being fined because his house number plaque was not centered on his door frame to Brenda's satisfaction, even though the HOA rules said nothing about centering. Tom banged a gavel to restore order. Here's what's going to happen. The board will vote on whether to remove Brenda Patterson from her position as president and from the board entirely, based on this incident and the pattern of harassment complaints. This vote will take place right now. Brenda's face went from pale to bright red. You cannot do this. I am the president. The bylaws allow for removal of any board member by a majority vote if they are found to have engaged in conduct detrimental to the community, Tom said. I call for a vote. All in favor of removing Brenda Patterson from the board, say aye. Aye, said Tom. Aye, said Karen. Aye, said James. Patricia Simmons sat silent, looking between Brenda and the other board members. Finally, she whispered, Aye. Tom looked at Brenda. 4-0 with you abstaining. You are removed from the board effective immediately. Please turn over all HOA records and property in your possession within 24 hours. Brenda grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center without another word. Patricia looked like she wanted to follow but stayed in her seat, staring at the table. After Brenda left, Tom turned to me. Marcus, on behalf of the board, I apologize for what you have been put through. This should never have happened. We will be implementing new oversight procedures to prevent this kind of abuse going forward. I nodded. I appreciate that. But I want to be clear. I have filed a police report, and I will be pursuing this matter legally. What Brenda did was not just an HOA issue. It was criminal. We understand, Tom said. The board will cooperate fully with any police investigation. The meeting adjourned, and several homeowners came up to me afterward to shake my hand or pat me on the back. Donald Frazier, my neighbor, grinned and said, "About time someone stood up to her. She's been a terror for years." Over the next few days, things moved quickly. The Phoenix Police Department assigned a detective to the case, a middle-aged man named Detective Morrison, who interviewed me, reviewed the video footage, and then interviewed Kevin Mills, the fired plow driver. Kevin confirmed everything and agreed to testify that Brenda had paid him to dump snow on my property. Detective Morrison also interviewed Brenda, who initially denied everything but eventually admitted to making a suggestion to the driver about where to put excess snow. She claimed it was not malicious, just practical, but the detective was not buying it. Based on the evidence and Kevin's testimony, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office filed misdemeanor charges against Brenda for criminal mischief. She was formally charged and given a court date. I was listed as the victim and told I could provide a victim impact statement if I chose, but I was not done yet. The criminal charges were just the beginning. I wanted Brenda to understand that actions have consequences, and I wanted those consequences to be significant. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s named Zara Mitchell, who specialized in HOA disputes and civil litigation. When I told her my story and showed her the evidence, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "We can work with this. You have grounds for a civil lawsuit for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, property damage, and possibly more. Arizona law allows for punitive damages in cases of malicious conduct, and paying someone to sabotage your property definitely qualifies." "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "That depends on what we can prove and what the damages are. Did you suffer any actual financial loss? Did you have to miss work to deal with this? Did you incur any costs?" I thought about it. I had to take time off work to deal with the police, the HOA meetings, and the cleanup coordination. That's probably 10 hours of lost productivity. I also had to pay for the security camera system I installed because of the ongoing harassment, which was about $1,200. And there's the emotional distress of being targeted and harassed for months. Zara nodded, taking notes. "We can work with that. I would recommend filing a civil suit for compensatory and punitive damages. The goal is not necessarily to get a huge payout, but to send a message that this behavior will not be tolerated." "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" I asked. "Civil suits can take months or even years, but in a case this clear-cut, we might be able to negotiate a settlement relatively quickly, especially once Brenda realizes how much trouble she is in." I authorized Zara to file the lawsuit, and within 2 weeks, Brenda was served with papers. The suit named her personally, not the HOA, since her actions were clearly outside the scope of her HOA duties. We were seeking $25,000 in compensatory and punitive damages, plus attorney fees and costs. Brenda's response came through her own lawyer about a week later. They denied liability and claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding. They argued that Brenda had simply been checking on the plow driver and that any conversation they had was innocent. The problem with that defense, of course, was that Kevin Mills had already confessed to being paid to dump snow on my driveway, and the criminal charges were based on that confession. While the civil suit was progressing, the criminal case moved forward as well. Brenda's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was not willing to just let it go. The evidence was too strong, and the offense was too deliberate. Eventually, Brenda pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of criminal trespass in exchange for the criminal mischief charge being dropped. She was sentenced to 1 year of probation, a $500 fine, and 50 hours of community service. She was also ordered to pay restitution to me for the cost of my time dealing with the incident, which came out to $300. The criminal conviction strengthened my civil case significantly. Zara used it to argue that Brenda's conduct was not just negligent but criminally malicious, which opened the door for substantial punitive damages. About 2 months after the criminal case concluded, Brenda's lawyer reached out to discuss a settlement. The initial offer was $5,000. Zara countered with $20,000. We went back and forth for a few weeks before settling on $15,000. Plus, Brenda had to cover my attorney fees, which were another $4,000. She also had to sign a binding agreement that she would not contact me, approach me, or come within 100 feet of my property except to drive past on the public street. Any violation would result in additional penalties and a restraining order. When the settlement check arrived, I felt a sense of satisfaction that I had not expected. It was not really about the money. It was about standing up to a bully and making sure she faced real consequences for her actions. Brenda had tried to bury me with snow, and I had buried her with legal consequences that cost her job, reputation, criminal record, and nearly $20,000. But I was not quite done yet. I still wanted to make sure the HOA itself was held accountable for allowing someone like Brenda to run amok for so long. I attended the next regular HOA board meeting and addressed the new board, which now consisted of Tom Henderson as president, Karen Woodley as vice president, James Martinez as secretary, and 2 new members who had been elected to fill the vacant seats. "I want to talk about reforms," I said. "What happened to me should never happen to any homeowner in this community. Brenda was able to abuse her power because there were not enough checks and balances in place. I would like to propose several changes to the HOA bylaws and procedures." Tom nodded. "We are definitely open to suggestions." "What did you have in mind?" I had prepared a detailed proposal, which I handed out to the board members. First, I proposed that all violation notices be reviewed and approved by at least 2 board members before being issued. No single person should have the power to issue violations unilaterally. Second, I proposed that homeowners be given a minimum of 30 days to correct any alleged violation before fines can be assessed. Third, I proposed that the board implement a formal complaint process for homeowners who feel they are being harassed or unfairly targeted. And fourth, I propose that all board members and committee chairs undergo training on Arizona HOA law and fair enforcement practices. The board members reviewed my proposal, passing the pages back and forth and discussing among themselves. Finally, Tom looked up. "These are all reasonable suggestions. I move that we put this proposal to a full homeowner vote at the next annual meeting. In the meantime, I propose that we implement these procedures informally as a pilot program." The motion passed unanimously. Over the next few months, the HOA's enforcement approach changed dramatically. Violation notices dropped by about 70%, and when they were issued, they were for legitimate, clear violations with ample time given for correction. Several homeowners who had been in long-running disputes with the previous board found their issues resolved quickly and fairly. As for Brenda, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had put her house up for sale and was moving out of state. Her real estate career in Phoenix had taken a major hit once word got around about her criminal conviction and the lawsuit. Nobody wanted to work with an agent who had a reputation for harassment and vindictive behavior. The house sold in March, and I watched from my window as the moving truck pulled away. I felt no particular emotion about it. She had made her choices, and she had faced the consequences. That was justice. My life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after months of conflict and legal battles. I repainted my front door, this time choosing a color that was so indisputably neutral that nobody could possibly object to it. Not because I was afraid of another fight, but because I was tired of thinking about door colors and HOA rules. The security camera system stayed up, though. I had learned the value of documentation, and I was not about to make myself vulnerable again. The cameras kept recording, day and night, silently watching over my property. Spring arrived, bringing warm weather and blooming desert flowers. The subdivision started to feel like a real community again, rather than a battleground. People stopped talking about HOA drama and started talking about normal neighborhood things like barbecues and kids' birthday parties. One Saturday afternoon in April, I was washing my car in the driveway when Donald Frazier walked over from across the street. "Hey Marcus, some of us are planning a neighborhood block party for next month. Would you be interested in helping organize it?" I looked up from scrubbing my wheel wells and smiled. "Yeah, I'd be happy to help." "Great," Donald said. "We're trying to build more community spirit around here. Lord knows we could use it after the past year." "No kidding," I agreed. As Donald walked back to his house, I reflected on everything that had happened. Moving to Meadowbrook Heights had indeed been one of the worst decisions of my life, at least initially. But standing up to Brenda, fighting back against her harassment, and ultimately winning had taught me something important about not backing down when you are in the right. The legal system had worked, slowly and imperfectly, but it had worked. The police had investigated. The prosecutor had filed charges. The judge had imposed penalties. The civil court had awarded damages. And the HOA, faced with clear evidence of wrongdoing, had removed a toxic leader and implemented reforms. It was not a perfect ending. I had spent months stressed and angry, dealing with lawyers and police and endless documentation. I had spent money on cameras and legal fees, even though most of it was eventually reimbursed. I had lost time and energy that I could have spent on work or hobbies or relationships, but I had also won. Completely and decisively. Brenda had tried to make my life miserable, and instead, she had lost her position, gained a criminal record, paid substantial damages, and been forced to leave the neighborhood in disgrace. The tenfold return I had promised myself when I first saw that pile of snow in my driveway had been delivered. The block party happened in May, on a beautiful Saturday evening when the temperature was perfect and the sky was clear. Someone set up a grill, someone else brought a portable speaker for music, and people brought folding chairs and coolers. Kids ran around playing tag while adults stood in clusters talking and laughing. Tom Henderson, the HOA president, raised a beer bottle and called for attention. "I just want to say a few words. This past year has been challenging for our community. We have had our share of conflicts and difficulties, but we have come through it stronger and more united. We have new procedures in place to ensure fairness and transparency. We have a board that is committed to serving the community, not ruling over it. And we have homeowners who are willing to stand up for what is right. Here's to Meadowbrook Heights, and here's to all of you." People raised their drinks and cheered. I caught Tom's eye across the crowd, and he nodded at me with a smile of respect and acknowledgement. Later that evening, as the party was winding down and people were packing up their chairs and coolers, a woman I did not recognize approached me. She looked to be in her 30s with curly brown hair and a friendly smile. "Are you Marcus Reeves?" "That's me," I said. "I'm Jennifer Cole. I just moved into the neighborhood last week. I heard about what you went through with the previous HOA president, and I just wanted to say thank you." When I was researching the neighborhood before buying, I saw all the reviews online talking about how the HOA was a nightmare. But then, I saw more recent reviews saying things had changed. "Your fight made a real difference." "I appreciate that," I said. "I hope you have a much better experience than I did." "I'm sure I will," Jennifer said. "It takes courage to stand up to bullies, especially when they have institutional power. You did the right thing." After Jennifer walked away, I stood in my driveway for a few minutes, watching the last of the neighbors say their goodbyes and head home. The streetlights had come on, casting a warm glow over the subdivision. My front door, with its neutral gray paint, looked perfectly ordinary and unremarkable. My driveway was clear and accessible. My security cameras were recording, as always, but there was nothing threatening to record. Meadowbrook Heights was just a normal suburban neighborhood now, with normal problems and normal pleasures. The tyranny of Brenda Patterson was over, defeated by documentation, persistence, and a willingness to fight back against injustice. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and sat on my couch. My phone buzzed with a text from Zara Mitchell, my lawyer. "Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Hope things are calm," I typed back. "Things are great, thanks again for everything. Anytime, you were a model client, good luck with everything." I set my phone down and leaned back, closing my eyes. The whole ordeal had lasted nearly a year from start to finish, from that first door color violation to the final settlement payment. It had been exhausting, frustrating, and at times infuriating. But it had also been necessary. People like Brenda Patterson thrive when good people stay silent or back down. They count on others being too tired, too intimidated, or too apathetic to fight back. They use institutional rules and procedures as weapons, twisting them to serve their personal vendettas. They hide behind positions of authority and the veneer of community service. But when someone stands up, documents everything, and refuses to be bullied, the whole house of cards collapses. Brenda had been used to people backing down. She had probably gotten away with similar behavior for years. But when she encountered someone who would not back down, who would fight her in every available forum, criminal court, civil court, and the court of public opinion, she had no defense. The snow plowing incident had been her fatal mistake. If she had stuck to petty violation notices and passive-aggressive enforcement, she might have gotten away with it indefinitely. But by paying a contractor to sabotage my property, she had crossed a line into actual criminal behavior. And because I had cameras, I had caught her red-handed. The cameras had been the key to everything. Without video evidence, it would have been my word against hers. The plow driver might not have confessed. The police might not have taken it seriously. The HOA board might have sided with her. But the cameras did not lie, and the footage was irrefutable. In the weeks following the block party, life continued its return to normalcy. I started dating someone I met through a friend, a school teacher named Rachel who lived in Scottsdale. Work was going well, with a major project launching successfully and earning praise from my boss. The HOA sent out a newsletter highlighting the new enforcement procedures and inviting homeowners to serve on various committees. I was asked to join the Architectural Review Committee, the very committee that Brenda had once chaired. I declined politely, explaining that I had no interest in being involved in HOA governance. I had fought my fight and won my victory. Now I just wanted to live my life in peace. Summer arrived, bringing the brutal Phoenix heat that made being outside during the day nearly unbearable. I spent most of my time indoors, working in air-conditioned comfort and venturing out only in the early mornings or late evenings. The subdivision was quiet during the summer months, with kids off at camps or families away on vacation. In July, I received an unexpected email from a journalist who wrote for a local news blog about HOA issues in Arizona. She had heard about my case and wanted to interview me for an article about HOA reform and homeowner rights. I agreed, figuring that sharing my story might help other people in similar situations. The article ran in August, with the headline "How One Phoenix Homeowner Fought Back Against HOA Harassment and Won." It detailed the entire saga, from the door color dispute through the snow plowing incident and the eventual criminal and civil consequences. The article included quotes from me, from Tom Henderson, and even from Zara Mitchell, who spoke about the broader issue of HOA overreach in Arizona. The article went viral, at least by local news standards. It was shared thousands of times on social media, and I received dozens of emails from people around the state sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some asked for advice, some just wanted to vent, and some thanked me for standing up and fighting back. One email in particular stood out. It was from a man named Greg Lawson who lived in Tucson. He wrote, "I've been fighting my HOA for 2 years over a similar issue. They keep issuing bogus violations, and I keep appealing them, but it's exhausting. Reading your story gave me hope that it's possible to win. I'm installing cameras this weekend, and I'm going to start documenting everything. Thank you for showing that it can be done." I wrote back, encouraging Greg to stay strong and to make sure he kept meticulous records. I also recommended Zara Mitchell's law firm in case he needed legal representation. Fighting an HOA was not easy, but it was possible, and people needed to know that they did not have to just accept abusive behavior from people in positions of petty power. By the time fall arrived, the story had mostly faded from public attention. The news cycle had moved on to other issues, and my inbox of emails from strangers had slowed to a trickle. Life in Meadowbrook Heights continued quietly, with the HOA functioning in a much more reasonable and professional manner under Tom Henderson's leadership. I never saw or heard from Brenda Patterson again. I did not know where she had moved or what she was doing, and I did not care. She was a chapter of my life that was closed and done. Whatever consequences she continued to face from her criminal conviction and civil judgment were her problem, not mine. One evening in October, I was sitting on my back patio with Rachel, enjoying the cooler weather and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She had been hearing stories about the HOA saga in bits and pieces over the months we had been dating, but I had never really told her the whole story from start to finish. "So do you regret moving here?" she asked. After everything that happened, I thought about it for a moment. At the time, absolutely. There were days when I wanted to just sell the house and leave, cut my losses and start over somewhere else. But looking back now, no, I don't regret it. I learned a lot about standing up for myself. I learned about documentation and legal processes. And I helped make this a better place for everyone else who lives here. "That's a healthy way to look at it," Rachel said. "A lot of people would have become bitter and angry." "Oh, I was bitter and angry," I admitted, "for months. But bitterness is exhausting, and at a certain point, you have to let it go and move forward." Brenda paid her price. I got justice. The HOA reformed. That's about as good an outcome as anyone could hope for. Rachel smiled and squeezed my hand. "You're a good man, Marcus Reeves." "I'm just a guy who would not let someone push me around," I said. "There's nothing special about that." "Actually, there is," Rachel said. "Most people would have given up or backed down. You did not. That's special." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of children playing and a dog barking. Normal neighborhood sounds, peaceful sounds. My phone buzzed with a notification from my security camera app. I glanced at it and saw that it was just a delivery driver dropping off a package on my front porch. I watched the brief video clip of the driver setting down the box, ringing the doorbell, and walking away. The cameras were still there, still recording, still protecting me. But they were no longer recording evidence of harassment or malice. They were just recording the mundane activities of daily life, exactly as they should be. In November, the HOA held its annual meeting and election. Tom Henderson was re-elected as president by acclamation. Karen Woodley remained as vice president. The financial report showed that the HOA was in good fiscal health, and several infrastructure improvement projects were approved, including repairing the community pool and upgrading the landscaping in the common areas. During the open forum portion of the meeting, several homeowners stood up to thank the board for the improved atmosphere and fairer enforcement. One woman said, "I've lived here for 8 years, and this is the first time I've actually felt like the board was working for us instead of against us." "Thank you for that." Tom smiled and said, "We are here to serve the community, not rule over it. That's how it should always be." As I left that meeting, I felt a sense of closure. The fight was over. The reforms were in place. The community was healing. My role in all of it was complete. December brought the holiday season, and Meadowbrook Heights was transformed with lights and decorations. The HOA had loosened its restrictions on holiday displays after homeowners complained that the previous rules were too strict. Now, houses were decked out in colorful lights, inflatable snowmen, and elaborate nativity scenes. It was cheerful and festive, a far cry from the oppressive atmosphere that had existed under Brenda's regime. Rachel and I spent Christmas together, and I found myself thinking about how much had changed in just 1 year. Last Christmas, I had been in the middle of the conflict with Brenda, stressed and angry and preparing for legal battles. This Christmas, I was happy and relaxed, enjoying the season with someone I cared about in a neighborhood that finally felt like home. On New Year's Eve, as midnight approached and fireworks began to explode across the Phoenix sky, I stood in my driveway and looked at my house. The neutral gray door, the neat lawn, the security cameras mounted discreetly under the eaves, the driveway clear and accessible with no snow to block it because Phoenix winters did not typically bring snow, and even when they did, I now knew how to protect myself. This house, this neighborhood, this whole experience had been a test of my character and resolve. I had been pushed to the edge by a petty tyrant who thought her position gave her the right to make my life miserable. But I had pushed back, harder and smarter, using every tool at my disposal. The snow that Brenda had used to try to bury me had melted away months ago, but the consequences I had delivered to her would last for years. A criminal record, a civil judgment, a ruined reputation, the loss of her position and her home, tenfold. I had promised myself that I would return the favor tenfold, and I had delivered on that promise. As the clock struck midnight and the new year began, I raised a glass of champagne to myself, to justice, to persistence, to the power of documentation and the rule of law, to standing up to bullies and winning. Meadowbrook Heights was my home now, truly and finally. The war was over. The peace was won. And I could finally just live my life, secure in the knowledge that I had fought the good fight and emerged victorious. The cameras would keep recording, the security system would keep monitoring, and I would keep living my life on my terms, not on the terms of anyone who thought they could push me around. Brenda Patterson had tried to bury me with snow. Instead, she had buried herself with her own malice and stupidity. And I had been there to document it all, to fight back, and to make sure justice was served. That was the real story of Meadowbrook Heights. Not the petty disputes over door colors or lawn heights, but the larger truth that ordinary people could stand up to institutional bullies and win. It took courage. It took documentation. It took persistence and a willingness to fight in every available forum, but it was possible. And I had proved it. The fireworks continued to light up the sky, and Rachel came out to join me in the driveway. We stood together, watching the celebration, and I felt truly content for the first time in over a year. "Happy New Year," Rachel said, kissing me softly. "Happy New Year," I replied. And it was. It really, truly was. The nightmare was over. The victory was complete, and life finally was good.